Hello, everybody. First of all, a big thank you for the opportunity to follow my colleagues, of course, and the opportunity to host 3 parallel sessions on innovations that are changing the justice sector, together with my colleagues. So I'm Ronald Lenz from the Hague Institute for Innovation of Law, responsible for innovation, strategy and programs. And as a short introduction to this group conversation, let me share the following. I mean, COVID has pushed the justice sector, like many other sectors, to accelerate with its digital and online transformation. But eJustice is not just about digitizing the existing justice system and infrastructure. With this digital transformation, we have the opportunity to actually rethink how justice services benefit citizens. It is fair to say that eJustice is also the emergence of a new market. And that only makes sense when current resolution rates are around 30%. Less than 5% of people with problems use lawyers, and prevention of justice problems hardly get attention. So we need a new justice market with new players that use breakthrough technologies to provide innovative services that are people-centered, because there's a huge demand for it. So it's great to talk to these innovators, hear about their companies, their visions, and on technology, and also how they connect to the current justice systems, the opportunities and also challenges they see. So with that, let me welcome the panelists here, and let's start off with a short round of introductions. Daniel, could you go first?
Yes, thank you, Ronald. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Daniel Halmer. I'm the founder and CEO of Connie. Connie is, in the terminology that we use in this conference, a claiming platform. We would usually talk about justice as a service platform. Sometimes also we talk about legal fracking in an intentionally polarizing way. What we do is we enforce consumer claims online, easy, and without with assuming of the cost risk from the consumer. And we've done that for 4 years now, and are roughly 80 people based out of Berlin. I'm a lawyer and business graduate myself. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. Max.
Yes, thank you, Daniel. And thank you, Ronald, of course. My name is Max. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Objection. We're based in Amsterdam in Netherlands. And we help people fight unjust traffic and parking fines for over 3 years now. The technology that we build is enabling people to just take a picture of the fine, upload it to Objection, and then our system takes over and helps people to see whether the fine is unjust. And if it's unjust, then the objection is automated and sent to the right authorities. We helped over 50,000 people already and saved over 1 million euros. And the way that we built the system is enabling us to offer it in other categories as well. So I'm really looking forward to the session to hear what everybody has to say and what opportunities and challenges you all face in building your company. So I'm looking forward. Thank you.
Thanks for the introduction, Max. And then we have both Joni and Leonard from Demande Justice. Joni, maybe you start. I'm not hearing you.
Joni, you're still on mute.
Do you hear me now?
Yeah, there you are.
Sorry. Thank you for the kind invitation to speak today. My name is Joni Ohana. I'm speaking today with my associate, Leonard Selem. We're the co-founders of Litige.fr, also known under the company name of Demande Justice. Litige.fr is a dispute resolution service that enables litigants to send demand letters in order to reach an amicable agreement, and if necessary, to file a direct complaint to the court. Everything online, everything paperless, with optional assistance from a legal professional. It's a company that has been active since 2012. It is today a team of 30 people, all based in Paris, and our platform processes about 260,000 cases every year in labor disputes, e-commerce, landlord-tenant disputes, housing, insurance companies, basically everything we all know as a daily life dispute. Yeah, thanks again, and we're very happy to share ideas with this great panel.
So Leonard, second best for last.
Yeah, thank you, Ronald. I won't spend many time explaining the purpose of our company because Yoni did it very well, but I'm very happy to be here with you.
Great, then guys, let's jump a little deeper into your actual companies and explain a bit more on the actual workings, how you use technology, how you use it now, and also what your future is on the use of technology and which types of technologies you look at. Daniel, could you jump in and feel free to explain more how your service actually works, right? Everybody knows Connie just yet.
Sure, I will make it very, very, very simple and transparent. So we started out with a new kind of law that was introduced in Germany in 2015, and it's called Rent Control, Mietpreisbremse. And we took that also, number one, because it's a huge societal problem, increasing rents in big cities, but also to make a case to prove that actually it is possible to use technology and to use automated processes to enforce more complex legal claims than the first generation of claiming platforms, which were centered around flight delay compensation. This was the first generation, great businesses, great successes, but they took the easiest conceivable legal cases there are. And now we try to take it a step further and try to enforce rent control legislation, which is a bit more complex. It involves 30 to 50 to 100 different data points according to which the case is assessed based on the data entries of the tenant, of our client. Then there's a preliminary assessment, a savings potential that is displayed in live on the screen for the tenant, for the customer. And then the customer can actually engage us to enforce his or her claim against, as I said, against a commission based on the success of the case, so the client is not bearing any cost risk. Now, in terms of technology, what we believe in right now is a hybrid model of a human-based legal know-how that's being put to use, but basically surrounded by technology that helps that human know-how, bearer of know-how, to multiply his or her legal knowledge to the greatest extent possible. So what we do is we have 50 so-called case handlers who may or may not be legally trained persons, who then click through the case, and the algorithm, the software that we have provided, it's called Connie Engine. It basically helps them by answering simple questions that might not necessarily require legal knowledge to process and take the case even further. We also do use machine learning to some degree. Right now, we believe that we don't need that to make the model work, but I think this is where the future really lies. Let me just highlight one of the main reasons why I think machine learning and data extraction is a potentially powerful tool. Legal language is a very standardized language, which makes it way easier for a machine learning algorithm to process and to semantically interpret the meaning of a text. And but we're only at the start of this technology endeavor.
So Yoni, probably parallels with Latish. Could you follow up and tell me a bit more about how your services work?
Yes. Speaking for dispute resolution platforms, we've been working a lot on self-care. The idea is to achieve, most of the work is being achieved by the client himself, because to process lawsuits and dispute resolution at an industrial scale, you need a system that relies on autonomous customers. And that's exactly what we've been trying to do at litige.fr. Our clients actually do the jobs themselves. They answer very basic questions about their case and their opponent, and this helps eventually the system generating the legal documentation they need to resolve the claim. So that would be the first technology we've been working on over the past years, and the second one would be data mining. Definitely a key tech trend in our sector. At litige.fr, we collect and we analyze huge amounts of data from thousands of cases in order to improve our services on multiple levels. For example, we use the data to improve the amicable settlement rates in the procedures in order to try to avoid for lots of litigants to actually bring their case to court and go through very complex and time-consuming further proceedings. We also use the data to optimize litigation delays with an increased knowledge of very specific requirements for each and every court in France and jurisdiction in France. And a third example would be the use of the data to rate opponents, to rate companies and brands that have been prosecuted by our clients on litige.fr. So I would say that, yeah, the data analysis is critical in the pursuit of making your service more efficient.
Yeah, thanks for explaining, Yoni. So Max, how does that relate to abjection?
Yeah, it relates pretty much. Thank you, Ronald. I really, well, a lot of things that you say sounds familiar with our system as well. It works as follows. When people get a traffic fine or parking fine, they can take a picture of the fine, and then our system extracts all the relevant information from the fine using OCR, optical character recognition. And then based on the fact code that you got the fine for. So for example, if you run the red light in Holland, the fact code is R602. And if you have your cell phone in your hand while driving, the fact code is R545. Well, you have hundreds of fact codes. And based on your fact code, you get specialized questions for your type of fine. And then those questions are based on jurisprudence and the law. And based on the answer that people give, it's really just, they get 2 or 3 options per question. And our system can see whether or not there's a reason to make an objection. So we kind of filter out the fines that are correct, and then we explain to people, okay, this fine is correct because you did run the red light, or you did excel the speed limit. And if we see there's a reason to make an objection, our system automatically makes the objection. It's generated automatically, and then we send it to the right authority. And while we use data to improve the system and to improve the filter. So we've handled over 50,000 cases, so we really know what fact codes are good fact codes, and what fact codes are fact codes that, well, the police or people in the city make mistakes while issue them. So we use that data to improve our system and to make sure that we help people in the right way. So if we say to people, this fine is correct, and we know it 100% sure.
So what is the next step for you? What do you plan to do in the next coming years? What kind of opportunities do you see?
Yeah, that's a good question. We are actually in the middle of that discussion ourselves. We built the system in such a way that you can pour in legal problems, and then the system works. So we're looking at a couple of things. We're looking at expanding in Holland, so adding more categories in Holland, and expanding internationally with the traffic fines, going to Germany, France, Italy, and Belgium for both consumers and companies. And well, make it accessible for people to just make sure that the fine is correct, and then if the fine is correct, they can just pay the fine and not be stuck with the rough feeling that it's not really fair. And well, it's our mission to make sure that everybody gets the access to justice that they deserve. So it's both other categories and traffic fines in other countries.
And for you, Yoni, what is next for Letitia? For the upcoming years, what opportunities do you see?
In terms of technologies, you mean?
Technology, but also growth of business.
I think, first of all, we've all seen how the COVID crisis have dramatically accelerated the pace of digital transition for all of us. And we've recently published a short study in a newspaper, French newspaper, Le Parisien, that shows how litige.fr has registered a 36% increase in claims in the e-commerce category last year. And this shows how consumers were kind of forced to convert to online shopping during containment and lockdowns. And I think this creates a growing demand for a simpler access to justice. And so it represents a great opportunity for all the actors of the sector, obviously. And in terms of technologies, I think definitely artificial intelligence will play a role. Maybe deep learning will play a role as well in the way we process and analyze data, you know, that was accumulated over the past years, and maybe with a more predictive approach of justice.
Yes, that makes sense. So within Connie, Daniel, how are the discussions on what's next for the upcoming years?
Yeah, I think I share some of the things that have been said. Maybe I would like to shed a light on another aspect of this, which is brand. We believe at Connie that one of the things that's missing in the consumer legal spectrum is a strong brand. So if you think about the adjacent industries, banking and insurance, for retail customers, you see that there are strong brands out there, the big banks, the big insurance companies. And that makes sense because a brand is a proxy for reliability, quality of service, et cetera, et cetera. And now if you look at the legal industry in the B2B sector, big law, you have the strong brands. I used to be working for one of the main law firms. They invest a lot of money in building their reputation as an excellent law firm. Now, if you look at B2C legal industry, there's no brand whatsoever. It's scattered around single practitioners, small law firms. And I think there's a huge opportunity in terms of building a large brand so that every consumer who has a legal problem is not trying to Google stuff, but is actually going to one of the platforms. And all of us here on the panel, we all started with one niche legal problem that we thought we could scale. And I think the big trend in this industry is now to go horizontal, to add as many product categories as you can to become a brand that is really a place where consumers know they can get their rights enforced. And I think this is a huge opportunity.
And it's interesting. Can I also understand your comment on a different level? Like you have something like Trustpilot for e-commerce, to have something like that instills trust in new services, or is it just the brand of the business itself?
I think that's an interesting aspect, but I think I understood, Yoni, this is more your approach, right? I find it very interesting, but I can't comment on this. Maybe Yoni can shed more light on it.
Yes, we've been trying to work on the rating of opponents and companies and brands that have been prosecuted on the website, but based on not only on declarative data like those platforms you were talking about, Ronald. We've been trying to use the data we extracted from the real cases that went to court, and that were settled amicably. So I think the future of those rating systems would be more based on real data coming from actual procedures.
So, I mean, we just talked about where you guys all are, the opportunities there, but obviously there are some challenges and some barriers to your growth as well. I want to go over to your colleague Leonard, and maybe to talk a little bit about what kind of barriers to growth you encounter and how also the relationship with the current justice sector plays into this. Could you share some insights on that?
Yeah, Ronald. Actually, our most important barrier is the general mistrust of the French people towards the justice system. I think it's more or less the same in other European countries, but for several years now, all countries show that, all studies show that 1 French out of 2 doesn't believe in the justice system anymore. So there is only 38% of French people that think that the justice system works properly and is efficient. So you can see that there is a clear opportunity and a barrier at the same time, because litigants tend to abandon their case and the high cost of legal representation and the time-consuming and complex filing system are both increasing this climate of mistrust. Second, there is a counterproductive regulation. For instance, many decisions are being made by government to reduce the amount of court filing. That's because court delays are insanely high in many jurisdictions. In France, that eventually produced no results at all, and have actually increased the complexity of litigants to bring their case to justice with more paperwork and formalities. For example, there is mandatory conciliation, settlement procedure in court that are only additional steps added to the general proceeding. Third, there is unfortunately corporatism. On top of being a heavily regulated market, justice is also seen as a monopoly by lawyers, especially, who have been struggling very hard to take us out of business since 7 years on the ground of unauthorized practice of law. Fortunately, after 7 years, we won both criminal and civil trials, which both went to the French Supreme Court. This case now allows a legal tech ecosystem to thrive in France with a clear case being set in France.
That's quite a story there, Leonard.
Yeah, it is.
And quite a lot you had to overcome, so it's impressive. Daniel, what comes to mind if you hear this from Letitia? What kind of growth barriers do you need to overcome?
It just rings not just one but many bells. We went through the exact same story, although we were lucky enough to go through it within only 3 years, not 7 years. So the same thing when we started the business model, we structured it around two decisions by the Federal Constitutional Court in Germany. But this didn't mean that, of course, the Bar Association and other interested parties claimed that it was in violation of the law, and we had to take it to the Federal Civil Court, the Bundesgerichtshof, and in a home run victory, I should call it, in November 2019, we got the 100-page precedent, groundbreaking decision that not only what we did, but what also a couple of other legal tech companies do is in fact fully in line with the existing law and with the constitution. So that was, I think, regarded as a big breakthrough in the German legal tech market. And it has also triggered a legislative initiative that is actually in the Bundestag as we speak, around facilitating legal tech, but also limiting the extent to which legal tech can or should be used vis-a-vis the lawyers, the system of traditional lawyers. And this is really still one of the main barriers, despite our court ruling, which was very successful. I think there are two main obstacles, at least in Germany, but I think this also applies to many other European jurisdictions. And number one is the prohibition of success fees, which is still more or less in effect in Germany, and which is one of the main USPs for us vis-a-vis our customers. We bear the entire risk of enforcement. And just to highlight how big this risk is, if you want to enforce a claim in Germany of 10 euros in front of a court of law, you're facing a cost risk of 470 euros, 470. So it's prohibitively expensive. We are bearing that risk. And the second obstacle on the regulatory side is the fact that as a law firm, you cannot take in investors who are not lawyers. It's called Fremdbesitzverbot in German, and it's a big obstacle because it basically means that if you want to develop technology and software, and of course you need a lot of money to do that, you cannot do this on the basis of a law firm. You have to find other regulatory ways, and this is the main reason why, although I'm a lawyer and most of our team, or a lot of our team are lawyers, we had to take the collecting agency license to perform our services. Let me just highlight one other thing that is, I think, needs mentioning. The other obstacle really is awareness of the people. I think if a legislator, through political debate and against hurdles in a political process, is able to pass a bill, it's not enough to just publish it in the legal gazette of the country. You have to advertise, you have to promote the laws that you're making in the jungle that we're living at. As consumers, nobody knows their way around. And we as a small legal tech company with our little marketing spending, we only can educate people to a certain extent, but the majority of the awareness needs to be triggered, I think, in a modern legal system by the legislator itself.
Daniel, that's so enlightening. Max, how do you look to your growth barriers and how the justice sector plays into that?
Yes, it's well, both really impressive and well, in the beginning sad, but in the end good stories. Well, we of course we also have some barriers with the government, and I think that like the main thing is that governments are not really ready yet to work with legal tech startups and to adjust to new technologies. They're really old-fashioned, and they have a mentality like, okay, we've been working for this like 30 years, so why change it now? But they are not really willing to adjust to the new new world that we live in, with the new technologies and the new ways of helping people get their access to justice and solve their problems. So, well, one small example is everything that we, all the objections that we make, we have to send it by physical mail to all the cities and the government as well. So we have to be in talks with every city and to say, well, it's 2021, let's use email, for example. And then they say, well, it's legally not possible to send it by email because the law says that it has to be by physical mail. So and they're not like willing to change the law. And that's one small example, but I think it's really typical that such a small thing is not able. We're not able to use mail because it's not allowed due to the law. So I think that a lot of governments, and not only in Holland, but I think also in Germany and France and Portugal and Spain, The governments are quite lacking behind with adjusting the laws and their willingness to cooperate and to see that the new technologies can also improve them and have a good effect on the efficiency that they and the things that they do. So yeah, I think that's the biggest barrier that we run into right now.
And I'm not sure you followed the eCodex presentations earlier in the day. And one of the earlier cases they said was when it comes to cross-border, like the cross-border justice platform, is to make sure that traffic fines are paid. But I can imagine for you as a company, it would be great to also get access to a platform like that. But maybe that's something to go into later. I mean,
yeah.
What is so great about this conference that is really a platform also for private sector to reach out to public sector and say we would love the future to look like the following, right? Because what I hear in many of these conversations is that if we put the people's needs at the very center, people-centered, then the entire value chain needs to be made up of services from both public sector and private sector. So let's go into the following question. So let's say there's an eJustice task force that would improve future public-private collaboration on eJustice. What would you want to make sure is on their agenda for the upcoming years? Leonard, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I would suggest to challenge existing partnerships between courts and big IT services companies, which are mostly too expensive and inefficient. I would suggest to foster competition with call for tenders open to startups. What are the only way to create a European legal tech ecosystem and keep our sovereignty in the next few years in a very sensitive field that is justice in Europe.
Thanks. Feel free.
Like a small business,
whatever you want.
Justice.
Yoni, anything from your end?
If I had to choose one thing, or in the task force, I would ask this task force to work on enabling legal text to provide legal advice. For example, to provide legal advice and consulting, for example. I think it would be a big step, you know, for companies like us to be able to provide legal advice. And I would also try to limit the number of deferrings in civil cases, civil courts, especially for small claims, reducing the delays people have to wait to get a very basic decisions for a basic claim. If you think about it, I'd like to pick up just on the counterproductive regulation thing we were talking about a few minutes ago. A few years ago, the French Ministry of Justice in France has decided, in order to reduce the amount of court filings, to create a mandatory conciliation. It's a settlement procedure in court. And it was a complete failure because, first of all, it didn't reduce the number of court filings at all, but it also extended, you know, litigants, the litigation delays. People had to wait 3 to 6 months more in the process of resolving their claim. And I think it shows how, you know, the people who made those decisions are completely disconnected from the realities of what's happening in courts and what's happening for people. And it's only contributing to create more and more distance between the French people. I'm talking about the French situation, but creating more gap, between the people and the justice system.
I think that's super clear. Max, what would you put in the agenda of this new task force?
Yes. I'll put it on the agenda that they go into partnerships and pilots with new companies, legal tech companies, and to build those partnerships build on trust and not a mistrust. Like we're not here to be a pain in the ass for governments or to make sure that they have a hard time doing their job. No, we're here to improve the legal system. And I think both governments and the legal tech startups have the same goal to make the world a bit of a better place. And we're not here to be a pain in the ass. So I would put on the agenda to build partnerships based on trust and not on mistrust.
Really clear. Thanks for that, Daniel.
Same, in the same vein, really. So another way of saying building on trust is seeing opportunities rather than risks. And in terms of regulation, I'm very outspokenly in favor of deregulation, especially of legal services in the pre-court context. There are a couple of countries in the European Union that don't have any requirements or regulation around out-of-court legal advice. Some countries have that. For example, in Germany, it's the so-called monopoly for lawyers. I understand in France it's similar. I think in Portugal it's also regulated. In my opinion, enforcing a claim or trying to enforce a claim on behalf of a consumer out of court, there's only a very limited risk of endangering that customer. The only thing that can happen is you can fail in enforcing that claim. That's the worst that can happen. And then that consumer can still retain a lawyer if he or she wants to. So I think the case for deregulating and liberalizing legal advice, especially with regards to enforcement of claims in the pre-court context, is very, very strong. I would even argue it's the only way that's in line with the EU treaties. The second thing I would put on the agenda, and I think we already talked about it in some way. When we started 4 years ago with enforcing rent control on behalf of tenants who are usually the weak parties to a lease agreement vis-a-vis the landlord, usually big companies in the big cities, we thought that judges would welcome our service. We thought that we would be running into open doors. Finally, there's somebody who helps those people who are not being served by the justice system so far. Quite the contrary was the case. We discovered that for not all, but for a lot of courts, a lot of judges, what we did or what we meant for the work is we created a lot of additional work that was not there before we started our service. And from a psychological human perspective, I can understand that. On the other hand, it shows how the system isn't really working. So what I really think what's dearly needed, if we talk about legal tech in the market side, on the legal advice side, it's necessary that this is also mirrored and matched by beefing up the technology level in the courts is so important, because otherwise we will hit this glass ceiling of bringing in cases to the courts that will take longer and longer, and the tendency to discharge cases will increase, because this is the only way a judge can actually handle his or her workload. And I think maybe there isn't enough focus on that. And I think also here the approach should be seeing the opportunities rather than focusing too much on the risks.
Thanks, Daniel. With the last couple of minutes before we get notified by the organization, I was looking at the chat and the questions that came up in the from everybody watching. There's one for you, Daniel. Is the success fee excluded in Germany at all, or is it inadmissible as the sole payment for legal service, like in Poland?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's actually something that's currently being changed. I mentioned this legal tech bill that is currently in the Bundestag, and that is supposed to change that. So the current situation is everything in court. There's no success fee except for very, very narrow exceptions. In the out-of-court scenario, theoretically, you can, on a case-by-case basis, agree on a commission-based fee structure with your client, but you cannot do this in a mass scheme. So you have to do it individually. And by definition, legal tech as an automated service is kind of excluded. It kind of excludes this kind of case-by-case individual agreement. Now that will hopefully change. And the new rule says everything up until a claims volume or claims value of 2,000 euros, you can agree on a commission. I think it's unlikely that this law will pass because we have the elections coming up in Germany in September, and it's not progressed enough in the legislative process. But in essence, it's not in practice. It doesn't happen. So that's the short answer.
What I see also in the chat is that there's a little bit of buzz going around the topic that we talked about on building a brand. So maybe it's good to expand a little bit on that as we have a couple of minutes left. Who would want to go first? Just raise your hand and take the mic.
Since I brought it up, I just let me briefly elaborate on this. So what do you do as a consumer today if you have a legal problem? First is you ask your friends. They might or might not have a relevant tip for you of a lawyer that's in your neighborhood or in your city. Or you go to some of the legal platforms that are there already, where lawyers pay for being featured, like like the Yellow Pages version, online Yellow Pages version. The problem with those, I mean, I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying there's some kind of moral hazard. If I'm a lawyer, if I'm a successful lawyer and I have enough clients, I have no need of being present in those platforms. So there could be some kind of negative selection with those platforms, and I think that's one reason why I think it should be a unified. It should be so the brand and the legal services should be in one hand. And I think it's pretty obvious if it's working in insurance, if it's working in retail banking. I think there's no real intrinsic reason why it shouldn't be also working in the legal field. Although I know, there's this debate around commercializing law. Law is not a product, and so on. I think if you look at it, if you look at the typical consumer claim, it's not so much about justice. It's about getting your right enforced, full stop. That's the major concern. So I'm not worried about, commercializing law in that narrow aspect of consumer law. But I know it's a heated debate.
Yoni, I see you smiling.
I completely relate to what was said before. If you think about our case at Demande Justice, we were mostly known under the brand of Demande Justice, for the early years of our company, and we eventually realized it was maybe too institutional. It was maybe too. It was resembling, official services and ministries and official recourses, and this is why we decided to change our brand name to litige.fr, which is more mass market kind of approach, and this was actually one step that helped us build a bigger company with a lot more success in reaching our clients.
Our last minute is here. Let's do a final remarks. Yoni, you're still on the mic, so you can go, and then we'll go to Leonard, Max, and end with Daniel.
Maybe I will let Leonard, give the conclusion.
Okay, totally fine.
It's quite good to see that many entrepreneurs in Europe share the same experience in their relationship with authorities, with states, with jurisdictions, with their customers. And I think we share many challenges, and they can really be overcome at the European level. Because for the last 50 years, Europe has been a driver to enhance public sector, to foster innovation, to foster competition. And we are very happy to participate to this conference, because we want to embrace this movement.
Thanks, Leonard. Max?
Yes, I totally agree with Leonard. It's really nice to be here and to hear all your stories that you run into the same problems, and if it's in Germany or in France or in Holland. And I think it's really good thing that we have a discussion like this, and that we there are entrepreneurs and legal tech startups that are willing to make a change and to improve people-centered justice. So I think together, if we keep going, we can really make this work.
Thanks, Max. The honor is yours, Daniel.
Thanks very much. And indeed, as Leonard said, we didn't know each other before our preparation call, Ronald. And within 10 minutes, I realized that we're facing exactly the same challenges. We're looking at the opportunities in a very similar way. And I think it's pretty obvious what needs to be done and what needs to happen to make the justice system more people-centered. I think this is one of the main takeaways also for me, and I think it's a great thing that this conference is actually labeled like that, because so far I think historically we've seen a justice-centered justice system, and I think justice is for the people, and it's so obvious that it's even hard to understand why it hasn't been there, or why it hasn't been discussed in a more focused way before. It's still in Germany. We're still missing a study, a legal demand study. It's still not there. The bar associations, I think, tried to prevent that in a way or another, but it's very obvious it needs to be people-centered. That's the purpose of the justice system, and that's, I think, what legal tech stand for. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks all of you. I mean, just like you said, Daniel, it was interesting in our prep call to, because we hadn't met before, that you share so many similar, let's say, steps in your journey. I think this conversation shows that to a wide audience. And the beautiful thing is, although there are barriers to growing, the basic voice that I hear from you is we want to collaborate. We want more partnerships. We want to make sure we work together to deliver people-centered justice. So I think it's clear that you're reaching out. And this is not just this parallel track, but I think there's 6 other innovators in the other sessions at the same time, and I'm expecting quite similar stories. So for now, thank you. Let me gather my thoughts on how I can summarize all of this and do this justice with Frank Lehman after. For now, a big thank you.
Thank you very much.